Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time, we had Doctor Who and the Daleks. Dad, what was that like?
Well, if I may quote, I used a word in the review that I said people should look up. I might have mispronounced it. I gave the American pronunciation. I said execrable. The dictionary.com says it's actually execrable. Anyway, it is listed as abhorrent, abominable, accursed, atrocious, confounded, cursed, damnable, defective, deplorable, despicable, detestable, disgusting, foul, hateful, heinous, loathsome, low, monstrous, nauseous, and obnoxious. I think that pretty much describes the movie that we saw last week.
Damn, man.
It was the worst thing that we've seen so far.
You really went all out, yeah. Yes, it was all of that and more. Luckily, though, there was one tiny benefit to watching the movie, which was it was a nice recap of the Dalek serial that we watched like almost a year ago at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in that serial, they ended up on Skaro, dealing with the Daleks, helping the Thals, and eventually killing all the Daleks. So, that's it. No more Daleks. Yeah. And
Yeah.
at the end, they went off and went to somewhere else, and that is where we are right now with episode or serial 3 of Doctor Who Classic. Yeah, this is where I say no spoilers in the comments whatsoever, and I guess we honestly could just get right into it. So
Okay.
It'll be nice to get back to our correct actors.
Now, which Doctor is this?
This is the first Doctor.
Oh, still back to also my favorite. So
Yeah.
William Hartnell. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Watched the original when it was first on. Still my favorite. So
Let's see, when are we going to get back to the first Doctor? It'll be a while again. But yeah, after this, we will be moving on to the second Doctor and then going in our normal order. And then looks like we'll have a bit of a break for some audios, maybe an animated or two. And then actually we have an interesting treat really later on down the line where we'll actually be watching some newer Doctor Who, which I've already reacted to, but you'll be reacting to for the first time.
Well, I have seen bits and pieces of both David Tennant and Matt Smith.
Yeah.
But I have not seen Peter Capaldi or Jodie Whittaker yet.
Yeah, well, we're not going that far forward. The only one... you haven't seen any of Christopher Eccleston, have you?
No. Again, we got up to that transition movie,
Yeah.
so I haven't seen anything that has
All right.
come after that. Again, other than just every now and then on a Saturday night, flipping through the channels.
Right.
It plays on PBS here, and I saw just a little bit of both Matt Smith and David Tennant's.
All right. Well, the particular episode we'll have for Christopher Eccleston is actually probably the best episode he had, so it'll be interesting, but that's weeks from now.
Okay.
For now, we'll be sticking with the first Doctor for this week, so let's get right into that. It's so relaxing now. It's interesting that Ian landed in a chair. Because normally you'd think the old guy would be the one that lands in the chair.
Oh! Have you hurt your head? Oh, it's terribly. Well, let me look at it. Oh, my neck hurts too. Oh,
Did the set get bigger, by the way?
It looks like it, yeah.
oh, it's going away now.
Can I have a glass of water?
Susan's fetching some.
Susan Foreman, you mean?
Yes.
What's he doing there?
Oh, he's cut his head. Are you feeling all right?
Dizzy.
They all have very specific memory problems. We just saw this on the movie.
Anything happens, let me know.
Well, what could happen?
I don't know.
Well, it's all terribly confusing.
How are you?
My head. Oh.
The TARDIS has a Murphy bed.
Huh? Still better than a bunk bed, which sometimes the TARDIS has too. Now the Murphy bed.
You killed it.
All right.
Extremely long scissors.
Yeah.
No, the ship must have stopped and put us down somewhere.
But where?
That is not a futuristic couch he
Where are
has.
we?
All these questions, Miss Wright, please.
Tell her about something being in the ship.
No, of course not.
You know, the less said, the better, eh?
Chesterton!
How did they miss
Coming!
that?
Coming!
Yeah, especially him. Also, her hair keeps growing and getting smaller.
Blurring before my eyes.
And where did she get the robe?
Yeah.
You're awake now.
I suppose this will all be
How are you feeling?
told to us momentarily here.
Well,
Susan?
I like this. Just a
You
story
do
on the
remember who I am,
TARDIS.
don't you? But where would it hide?
In one of us.
No.
Notice the lack
No.
of underscore. There's no music, which tends to make this a little bit
Stop talking
melodramatic.
like this. Can you imagine what the others would say if we told them? They'd simply laugh at us.
Supposing there isn't a fault.
I'm pretty sure the other episodes didn't really have a score.
We've just checked everything, and it's all perfect.
What happened to your shirt?
Fantastic.
It's been ripped for a couple of scenes now.
Okay.
How are you feeling?
No, I'm double thinking everything now.
Yeah.
That could be England.
Yes, I remember that.
That's very curious. That can't be what's outside the ship. This is a photograph.
Okay. I thought that looked weird, but I thought that was just the budget.
You can't blame us for this, Doctor.
Where is he? I've decided we need more time to think. We're all somewhat overwrought. Mr. Chesterton.
They might get suspicious of him. He just bailed during that.
I think you should go and apologize to Barbara at once.
I'm afraid we have no time for codes and manners.
Frankly, Doctor, I find it hard to keep pace with you.
You mean to keep one jump ahead. That you will never be.
For good or for evil?
One man's law is another man's crime. Sleep on it, Chesterton. Sleep on it.
Just gotta let him think. Even if he does apologize, the Doctor's the kind of guy that would work it back to, well, he's still right.
I'm sorry
Reminds
for
me
what
of that.
Grandfather
I
said.
may not always be right, but I'm never wrong.
Well, I guess that's just what they wear to bed.
Smoking jacket and some capris. Yeah, because, you know, that's highly fashionable.
And that's part one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's... Well,
The edge of confusion.
I mean, it's interesting, and it's also because, you know, this is the third episode in continuity with the other two of the first Doctor that we watched, where the first one we went back in time, second one we went to an alien planet. This time we're just gonna stick to the TARDIS and just see what's going on.
Yeah.
Now at the end there, when he's like, you know, looking over the control panel, I was kind of thinking like, okay, well maybe he's possessed. And I'm like, okay, that'd be interesting if the Doctor was possessed. But at the same time, it's like he could just be being him at that point because the Doctor is kind of weird like that.
Yeah.
So
Again, this it's, I don't want to say it's not poorly written. It's just that there was literally no action.
Yeah.
Okay, and without, as I mentioned before, without a kind of an underscore. And I hate to say that music can manipulate your mood and everything, but it seemed to drag, and perhaps that's not a fair description of it, but they could have used way more dialogue to get the idea across that nobody understands what's going on, because there were just seems like huge pauses in between some of these things where they leave us to fill in the blanks, and unfortunately we're probably all wrong about it. So
well, and it's also interesting too because like without the music, which I feel like they don't put much into these early episodes. Like that's more, I remember when we watched the Third Doctor episode and they had that 70s synth going throughout the whole thing. But on these, they generally don't have the music, but there is enough dialogue going through the episodes. This one, I feel like they already don't have a score, so they have to cut back on dialogue to get that feeling of a sort of slow burn mystery. Yeah. But
I don't know. I'm sure it'll all be resolved in the next episode.
Yeah,
but it seems like it's dragging a little bit.
Yeah, well, and that's also the interesting thing is there's only one more part. Like normally we have 4 parts, or like the Daleks we had 7 parts.
Lord.
Yeah. But for this one it's only 2 parts, so whatever is happening is just going to be resolved in the next episode. Yeah. So I guess we better get on to that then.
Alrighty then.
What are you two saying to each other? You're getting off the ship, Chesterton. Now? Yes, now. Get up.
I'm not sure if he's actually affected or anything, or if he's just being him. Yeah.
It means that the ship is on the point of disintegration. You're not to blame. All 4 of us are to blame.
We had time taken away from us, and now it's been given back to us because it's running out.
You see, when the column rises, it proves the extent of the power thrust.
Then what would have happened if the column had come out completely? Well, the power would be free to escape.
We have 10 minutes to survive.
10 minutes?
Before the TARDIS tries to get out.
That?
Maybe less.
Stop posing and do something.
Yeah. Get to work. 10 minutes.
Be careful, Doctor. So it's quite safe.
I wonder if this is a lead into the next episode. Like whatever thing is causing this, they'll go deal with
Why is
next.
that part safe? Originally, the machine wasn't at fault. We were. And it's been trying to tell us so ever since.
A machine that can think for itself?
Yes.
Is that feasible, Doctor?
No, think
The
not
mind
as you or I
boggles.
do, but it must be able to think as a machine. You see, it has a bank of computers.
Maybe this is when they find out that the TARDIS is alive.
Under this column.
Yes? Outside, the atoms are rushing towards each other, fusing, coagulating, and so the process goes on and on until dust
The
is
Big
formed.
Bang.
Well, for a
Dust
solar
then
system,
becomes
not the entire
solid
universe.
entity. I'd hoped to reach your planet Earth. Skaro was in the future, and I used the fast return switch.
Fast return switch. You've sent us back too far. Doctor, show me. Show me that switch. Where is it?
Oh, it's the beginning of our solar system.
Without a light, can I? It hasn't released itself.
What? You mean it's been on all this time?
Yes, it must have been.
Fast return lettered on with a Sharpie.
We're safe now. Are you sure?
Yes, you can all relax. We're quite safe now. But it was a narrow squeak.
All that because a button got stuck.
You know, my dear child, I think your old grandfather is going a tiny little bit around the bend. When I made a threat to put you off the ship, it must have affected you very deeply.
What do you care what I think or feel?
As we learn about each other, so we learn about ourselves. Yes. Oh, the title too big for me. You know, I acquired that ulster from Gilbert and Sullivan.
Oh, really? I thought it was made for two.
Well, shall we join the ladies, Doctor?
Yes, why not?
Grandmother? Look! Look at this huge footprint. Must be made by a giant.
Oh, roof of the world. That would be the Himalayas.
Also, did they actually go back to Earth? That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Now, before we do anything else, I had to look this up because I wanted to get it exactly correct. That last little bit there about the whole fact that you're about to lose the entire TARDIS because a spring was not functioning correctly.
Yeah.
Goes back to an old proverb, and I don't know if it's British or not, but they sometimes use it in reference to King Richard III, but this is the short variation. It says, "For want of a nail the shoe was lost, for want of the shoe the horse was lost, for want of a horse the battle was lost, for the failure of battle the kingdom was lost, and all for the want of a horseshoe nail." So it's, that idea of here's this incredible experience of Doctor Who and the TARDIS, and they're going throughout all the known universes, I guess, because he didn't mention the fourth universe or something there.
Yeah.
That they're going all the way back to the creation of our solar system, and a spring is about to end up killing them all.
Yeah.
So, ultimately, great story.
Yeah.
Just the execution, especially in the first episode, was just a little slow.
I mean, it almost makes me wonder if you probably could have cut that down to just one episode. It might have been it would have been a packed episode, but you probably could have done that. Which, that has been the general thing we've said about these older episodes. Like, okay, well, you could probably shave an episode off of this and be a lot tighter. But overall, that was pretty good.
Yeah, again, the second episode ends up saving the first one, so.
Yeah. And I did just remember, the next time we get back to the first Doctor is after we do all the 50th anniversary stuff, and then I'll be on Doctor Who season 8, and then we'll pick up right at the next episode and just go from there. No more of this, random episodes from each Doctor. We'll just keep going, and I do believe the next episode is called The Abominable Snowman. So, although I think that one is actually a missing serial, so we'll have to watch the Telesnap.
Again, I'll be honest with you, because it's been, 55 years since I saw these the first time. Because I was, 12 or 13 when these first came on. I don't remember these. I remember the Dalek one.
Right.
Because, how can you forget them? And again, I've mentioned before, I kind of vaguely remember the one about the Crusades, because, I'm a history teacher, and I loved history even back then, so that was a lot of fun. Yeah. But again, I've always said that, to me, my favorite episodes, the whole series, was the one where I believe it's called The Web or something like that, where they landed on a planet where the insects were the main life form on the planet, and they were like talking with the butterflies or the moths or something like that. So I don't think that's one that's on your list. But if it were, I would love to see that, because I distinctly remember these little. They were like, if I recall correctly, like bees or wasps or something, and they were little silverfish. And again, the moth people were, I think, the heroes. So just the visuals of that one for TV in the 1960s for 65, 66. I just thought that was incredible production values.
Now that would have been the first Doctor, still, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I didn't see anything past William Hartnell, because we were transferred back to the United States in the summer of '66.
Because I was going to say, the next episode we have is called The Web of Fear, but that is a second Doctor episode. Okay. So, but I mean, again, once we get past this 50th anniversary stuff, we are going to go back. So eventually we'll get around to it.
Okay.
But yeah, as this episode goes, it's an interesting choice, because pretty much with this time around on our classic block that we're doing, I'm pretty sure that each story in some way is to sort of build towards the 50th anniversary, which I'm just building to naturally in modern Doctor Who, just because I'm going through Series 7, and then the 50th anniversary comes after that. So at least I'm presuming that that's what my schedule maker has in mind, that these are all important. And so I was watching this, I was like, okay, well, this is only the third episode. Like, okay, when we first watched An Unearthly Child, I get that. It's the first episode. Then we watched the Daleks. Okay, that introduces the Daleks. And I was like, why are we watching this? But I do feel like this must be the establishing episode of the TARDIS is actually alive.
Yeah. And not only it's alive, but it's cranky.
That makes sense. That does make sense, because there's actually an episode where the Doctor is actually able to talk to the TARDIS. That was one of the Matt Smith episodes. And it was actually interesting watching their interaction and how the TARDIS interacts with the Doctor, because, this is technically his longest companion, and it knows pretty much everything about him. It kind of makes sense.
I would be interested in the Matt Smith episodes. Now, I'm going to say this as politely as possible.
Ooh.
Is the TARDIS character a male or a female?
A female.
All right, because again, when we see Legends of Tomorrow and all these other, the ship is almost always a female.
That's true. Yeah.
So, not implying anything. I just wanted to ask because that's always a very interesting interaction between whoever is the pilot of the ship and then the ship itself. So
so that's definitely interesting. That this is the reason that we watch this, is to establish this is the first time that even the Doctor realized that the TARDIS is alive. Even he, didn't even realize that fact, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, at this point, they don't have all the continuity and stuff like that. So you kind of wonder, okay, well, in the continuity that after this, it's interesting that he wouldn't know that the TARDIS would be alive or try to tell him something. So that's interesting.
But, I guess what they were trying to establish there is he's never been in that situation.
Yeah.
The fact that the TARDIS was malfunctioning and it was trying to tell him that it was malfunctioning.
Yeah.
Which leads us to believe that, again, in all of his adventures before he meets Ian and Barbara, maybe that he hasn't interacted all that much with other people. He's just been floating around and observing, and now because of picking up Ian and Barbara accidentally, he has to come to realization that he does affect that he can't just be his horrible cranky old self. That every now and then you have to take into account that not everybody is like him, and that he does realize that sometimes logic is not the best thing. Sometimes you do have to go on instinct, and that's ultimately that's his apology to Barbara there at the end.
Yeah, and it's also interesting too because with them figuring out some of the clues, like the clock and stuff like that, it's like, okay, they took note of that, but the Doctor didn't. Yeah. Whereas in what I've seen now with the 10th and 11th Doctor, they would take note of that. They would be like, okay, there's something wrong here. I just watched an episode where the Doctor was going through a forest and something was off, and he was like, do you know what the difference is between wind and trees talking to each other? And they just sort of stopped, and you could just hear something. He's like, there's no wind right now. All the trees are talking to each other. And he's like, that's weird. They've never talked this much. So he would notice that stuff. So it's interesting to think okay, this is when the Doctor wasn't always like the Doctor we know now. He had to learn over these 900 years. I think technically there's 900 years between this and what I'm on right now with Matt Smith. So it's just interesting to think now he would start to consider that thanks to this experience now with Ian and Barbara. Yeah. And they also did say that the Doctor and Susan have been to other places, and the TARDIS has recorded that, and then that's what we see here. Yeah. But it seems like now it's just they must have just been observers, or they didn't really get into trouble, and now they are. Yeah. Let's see. So I wrote down a decent amount of notes actually for only 2 episodes. So I wrote down the memory problems they were having, which is still, and the next one, the back of the neck, that was still just the TARDIS trying to tell them that something was wrong, which was interesting. We did not go with an intruder, which is interesting. It's purely just that the TARDIS was trying to tell them in just this weird way. It was trying to tell them that something was wrong, and but they didn't go with an intruder. They didn't go with being possessed or anything like that.
Yeah.
Which I thought would have been interesting. It was really just in this strange experience how they sort of start to go against each other before they realize what's really happening.
It made me wonder towards the end there if what was happening was the gaps in what they remembered is somehow the TARDIS moving them either forward or back even just a few minutes.
Yeah.
So that if you make the jump forward, that you don't remember what the last 3 minutes were, and so you begin to be suspicious about and they said did the doctor drug me, and that I gave you a sleeping potion to help you sleep. But it does again. That is something that would be extremely upsetting to somebody if you literally suddenly started looking around you and realized you couldn't remember the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, which they did kind of say they lost a chunk of time, and the TARDIS gave it back to them so that they could figure out what was going on, basically. So that was interesting. And for a little while there, I was kind of thinking like, okay, well, what if the Doctor is possessed? And I thought, okay, that would be interesting. The Doctor doesn't really get possessed, but then it's like, no, this is just how he would act in this sort of strenuous situation. Yeah. I wrote down the fourth universe, which honestly was just a real throwaway line that they had. But I was kind of thinking like, okay, because I've seen in New Doctor Who, it's very difficult to travel to another universe. But I do remember now that they said when there were actually more Time Lords, it was a lot easier to travel between universes. But it's impossible. It's almost impossible now because he's the last one. So that was interesting. I wrote down the gratitude. Barbara, Ian and Barbara kind of demanding gratitude for, building the fire with the cavemen and all the help they did with the Daleks and stuff. And, I was kind of saying like, okay, well, the Doctor, honestly, the Doctor's the kind of guy where it's like, if he does screw something up, he would still spin it around to back to where he's right. Yeah. Because he just does that. He doesn't just fully admit that he was wrong, which he did at the end of this episode, which was interesting. So honestly, for as short as this was, and the fact that it was all contained in the TARDIS and we just stuck to the four of them, it really was like good character development for the four of them.
Yeah. But I will also say, again, if I had remembered this from the 60s, watching that first episode and then having to wait a week for the second episode would have been way more difficult to comprehend than watching it like we did. Yeah. Because after that first episode, I would have been going, I don't get it. Where's this going? And I mean, even as a kid, I would have gone, I don't get this. It's too weird. And I might have lost interest. But because we're able to stream it and see them both together, it makes a certain better bit of logic.
Well, and I also find, and I brought this up in some other video I recorded today. I don't remember what it was, but I mentioned that there's a difference for me between just watching a show and then watching it on the channel. Like I get into a very analytical mindset. So we can do that. We can, take notes and, really try to figure all this out. But I mean, if we were just watching this, would we be able to get into it as much? Or like you said, when you were a kid, could you have gotten into that? And, some people have told me, like, when we watched the Daleks and, it was 7 parts long, it's like, well, it's really not meant to be binged. There was no concept of that in the 60s. So technically we weren't watching it, I guess, the proper way, but it worked out a lot better to
Yeah.
watch it that way. But for this, I feel like you would have to watch both of these back to back in order to
Yeah.
try to comprehend them.
And again, I'll be honest, I don't think these were replayed. Today, most TV series, they'll do like 22 to 25 episodes, basically half a year.
Yeah.
And then in the summer months, they'll do replays of some of the best episodes. But I don't remember Doctor Who being reruns.
I mean, well, and I think that's the whole thing of, which is why there are missing serials anyways, because the BBC, like, they aired them, and then either they were lucky enough to get stored away, and that's how we have them now, or they were, just thrown away or taped over to do something else. Because I guess the BBC just didn't have that same level of care.
Well, yeah, I think it's also, but again, this is the exact time when 63 to 64, 65, right in there, when networks, especially in the United States, but probably also at the BBC, began to realize the value of keeping some of this stuff.
Yeah.
BBC was running a long-running serial, like twice a week, called Coronation Street, and I'm sure that there are, as you move into the mid-60s, there are many more episodes on recording of that than there would be of Doctor Who, because, again, nobody ever thought that Doctor Who was going to be what it was, so, they didn't really care. But as all of the networks became aware of that, now we start having the archives of some of this stuff, and that's why we can go back and see stuff like this, and we're very fortunate.
Yeah, and I think even still in the second Doctor's era, there's a number of missing serials. But I think once you get to the third Doctor, once they realize, okay, we just brought in a third guy to play the main character, we should probably keep these, because if there's enough people that want to keep watching on to the third guy, we should probably start keeping these a lot better. So, yeah. Let's see. I wrote down kicking them out. I thought that was... I understand where the Doctor was coming from when he was going to kick them out. But the fact that he was going to kick them out without really knowing where he was kicking them out. He doesn't know if he's on Earth, if he's in space, if he's still on Skaro. He doesn't know. He's just going to throw them out of the TARDIS, and if they die, whatever.
Well, again, if you go back to that logical thing, that he's thinking logically and not on instinct, like Ian and Barbara, if he thinks that they are a threat to not only his survival, but to Susan's and the TARDIS, then the logical decision is to get rid of them. They are a threat to my existence, and they must go. Not thinking about whether or not he could be wrong, or what, if he's tossing out into space where they would, freeze or vaporize or whatever. So, But, again, that makes perfect sense based on his character. He just says, I am logical about this. I would hate to say that this is a Spock-like moment, but, the logical thing is if that's a threat to your existence, you've got to get rid of them.
Yeah.
No questions asked. So.
Alternatively, because we got the reveal of the fast return button, he could have also thought, well, they are a threat to my existence. I know I hit the fast return button, so there's a high probability that we are on Earth where we're supposed to be. So, but he wasn't, even he admitted he's not 100% sure. So, that was interesting. And then we got the reveal of the living TARDIS, that the TARDIS was trying to tell him something. And part of that came through with the fault locator machine, which was supposed to tell him where there was a fault, but the entire thing was going to be destroyed. So it was all lighting up, and then the TARDIS was trying to tell him, something's wrong, my energy is trying to get out, which was interesting. Yeah. And
it was the first possible idea of artificial intelligence. I mean, I think great science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke, right about this time, came out with one of the very first artificial intelligence stories, where he talks about how, and again, it's very similar to what later became the Terminator series, how if computers all over the world, like in the United States and India and China and all the rest of these places, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, what if somehow they all connected? Would they be able to link up to create an artificial intelligence, a worldwide web, or worldwide brain sort of thing? So It's just fascinating that back in 1963, when computers, especially where nobody thought about having computers in the home like we do today.
Right.
Computers were room-sized things for IBM and things like that. So the idea that somehow or other this has created an intelligence that can actually fear for its own future and its own safety, that's fascinating. Although, again, somewhat buried under a rather odd story in the first episode. But the second episode, again, makes up completely for it, in my opinion.
Right. And, that is interesting that they went ahead with it. And you could argue, well, it also works here because, it's supposed to be such an advanced ship that they were able to make it to where, yes, the ship is alive. I had another point. I don't remember what it was.
Well, we'll circle around to it.
Probably. Let's see. It's interesting that the whole thing of the heart of the TARDIS basically is underneath that column, and the column is actually there to suppress its entire power. Because if you just let loose that power, it would pretty much vaporize, which I guess it makes sense from what I've seen. There was, at the end of Christopher Eccleston's run, they actually open up the control panel, and the power of the TARDIS goes inside of Rose, the Doctor's companion, and it doesn't incinerate her, I guess because it focuses all of the power into her. Although they do say, at a point, the Doctor takes the power from her, and using that power repairs her and then sends it back into the TARDIS. The only thing is he couldn't fix himself, and so he had to regenerate. So I guess that does still sort of keep in line. I just never thought that the column would actually suppress the power, and that's why the column moves when they use the TARDIS, because they need to use more power but also still suppress it. So that's actually interesting. And the next thing I wrote down was the solar system. So when they opened the doors and it was just this blinding light, and they were like, it's just space. And it's like, it doesn't look like space. It's blinding light. But now I understand it is this solar system being created. That's what they're seeing out there.
The birth of our sun, yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting. So he was actually trying to get them back to Earth, which is interesting because he was very much against sending them back. But he was trying to get them back to Earth from Skaro. It's just that he just missed the mark way too much, and going into the birth of our solar system would have really destroyed the TARDIS, and that's why the TARDIS was trying to tell him, and that's why all this sort of happened, which is interesting. And I would bet you that's the last time we see the fast return button. Because I was kind of thinking, like, oh, the fast return button. He doesn't normally do that in Classic Doctor, or in New Doctor Who. He'll just, flick a bunch of switches and stuff, and then we're there. And it's like, and I bet this is why he doesn't do that, because just the simple fact that the spring got stuck and didn't bounce the button back, so they went to Earth, and then they just kept going further and further back in time until they got to a point where it was dangerous for the TARDIS to be there.
Because the Earth hadn't been created yet.
Yeah, because they must have just been smack next to the sun as it was being formed. So that was interesting.
And again, come on, guys, a Sharpie. You couldn't find a labeler. You couldn't put a little piece of engraved plastic that said "fast return."
I mean, there
was no budget for a labeler.
Not after those Daleks. Not after those Daleks. They spent 7 episodes because they needed to use as much of the Daleks as possible. You know what? I'm joking, but that makes way too much sense. Because they must have spent all this money on making these Daleks, which is why they had them in for 7 episodes, so they got their money's worth. And then the next 2 episodes were conveniently staying within the TARDIS.
Yeah.
The most we're doing is a costume change into Ian's weird robe that he had.
And a Murphy bed. Or
Yeah.
several Murphy beds.
Yeah, it's like...
Water in plastic bags.
Yeah, I mean, because I was thinking, like, you know, when it's like, oh, go get some water, it's like, well, does the TARDIS have a faucet? Because, you know, we saw last episode, they just had the little thing, and there you get some eggs and bacon in a little bar.
Yeah. The water thing, though, in the plastic bags, that's very much the early space program. NASA in the 60s, you know, sending Tang up because they couldn't send up orange juice, and, you know, all of the frozen dried foods and that sort of stuff. I mean, that was probably a nod to that, but still, you expect when they've got this console that it's going to be some kind of food replicator, but no, it's just, here, have a baggie of water.
Yeah, that was interesting. And then the last thing I wrote down was logic versus instinct. The Doctor's logic versus Barbara's instinct, which is interesting, and we got all that character development, especially between the two of them. Because honestly, I guess it wasn't a ton of character development for Ian and Susan. They were just kind of the same, but it was the Doctor and Barbara that were really, you know, clashing in this, which is interesting, and also just because it is definitely interesting to watch this because, you know, as I said, it makes sense to watch this because this establishes the living TARDIS, but it also it's essential to watch this because now you can see how the Doctor starts to be the Doctor that we know in modern Doctor Who. So that was definitely interesting. It makes me curious to watch the next serial, how maybe if sort of the lessons they learned will carry into the next one. It's going to be a while. It's going to be like 6 months before we watch the next episode.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's completely missing anyway, so we're just going to have to watch a telesnap reconstruction, which actually I think one of the episodes we're doing in this block, one of the episodes is missing. So I guess we can get used to it now. Okay. But yeah, we're going to take another break from the first Doctor, but we will be back with him, and overall, it's still better than the movie.
There's no words. There's simply no words. To waste a talent like Christopher Lee.
Peter Cushing.
Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, they're interchangeable. But yeah, I mean, that movie is just, you just sit and wonder why.
Yeah.
You know, if you're specifically doing it to raise an audience in the United States, that's not the way to do it. I mean, it was wrong. It was a horrible conception, horrible execution, waste of celluloid, waste of our time, waste of your time. So.
Yeah. And it also didn't help. I had to deal with copyright issues on that video.
Oh.
Yeah, it kept getting blocked, actually, in the UK and Ireland, which was frustrating. And every time I tried to re-edit it, it got blocked again. And I thought, what company cares about this movie? But I finally figured it out. I finally figured out how to get it. Hopefully. By the time this video goes up on YouTube, you guys will hopefully have watched that video. And we'll try not to keep harping on it through the rest of these Classic Who videos.
Best forgotten.
But on the bright side for you guys, it's better to harp on that movie than for us to harp on Kinda, which we were doing last time.
We apologize.
Yeah. Kinda is okay. They had better actors, at least.
Well, yeah. It's just we didn't get it because we didn't have the background that we needed to do that, so.
I guess. So, yeah, let's see.
Now, who's up? What's next for us?
Next up is The Web of Fear, the second Doctor story. So we'll be moving back on to Patrick Troughton.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, and I think... Ooh, that's 5 parts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my show will be over, so I don't have to worry about all that.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.